Shalom and hello, welcome to this side tangent video. In this video will just be a response to some of the comments that I've came across on the channel, and I'm not going to cover every single comment, but the few comments I will cover will summarize my thoughts on other comments. The reason for this video is that the channel is growing fast, and I'm beginning to see a lot of new faces. But at the same time, I feel like some of the newer people haven't seen my older videos and they don't understand my position. Therefore, this video will quickly bring people up to speed on what I believe and why I believe what I believe. But this is also why I strongly recommend that you watch some of my older videos and content to get a full grasp of the information that I've said, because everything is explained there as well. And also I will update my information as soon as newer papers come out. So with all that being said, this is a response video to comments left in several videos that indicate some people haven't seen my past videos and therefore they don't understand my position on certain subjects. So I'm going to respond to these comments, but also use these comments to recap old videos that that I've basically already covered to explain my position. Also, I want to make note of this. Please do not rush me to cover certain genetic papers. I will get to those papers eventually, but I have to first break down other genetic papers and, more importantly, the history before I can cover certain genetic papers, especially the ones dealing with the Bronze Age. With that being said, I believe that it is extremely important to understand the historical aspects of the ancient world and apply the historical context to the DNA to understand what was going on back then. So, with that being said, I'm trying to take my time with everything that I'm saying and that I'm covering. So do not, push these genetic papers. I don't want to overload people with too much information or worse, confuse people. Therefore, again, do not rush me to cover certain genetic papers. Trust me, I am aware of them. I have read them. I will get to them and I will cover them. But I'm going to take my time and I'm going to apply the historical context behind the DNA studies. Therefore, I need to build up to those papers. Also, if you truly want to know my position on things, number one, watch my past videos. And number two, please have patience and wait for more of my videos to come out. Remember, you don't fully understand my position because I haven't fully explained my position. More videos are on the way and new videos are coming out every week on Fridays at 6 o'clock p.m. With all that being said, let's begin with the video. So this is one of the comments that was left in my video. This was from Haplogroup J and Indo-Europeans, Greeks, Armenians, Iranians, and Indo-Aryans. And I'm just going to read what's underlined, the specific relevant part I feel like I need to correct, which is Haplogroup J is Hamitic Semitic, basically Afroasiatic. And I will actually have to disagree with that simply because of what I've covered in the past. What various linguists and geneticists have said is that haplogroup E is actually the progenitor of Afroasiatics. And like I said, I've covered this in this specific video, the origins of Proto-Afroasiatics, as well as many others, where it deals with the Afroasiatic origins and where they came from in the world and their haplogroup. So no, haplogroup J is not Hamitic Semitic or Afroasiatic. Haplogroup E is considered to be Afroasiatic, Proto-Afroasiatic even. And I don't think there's any scientist that would say haplogroup J is the origin of Afroasiatics. So this paper called Y chromosome E haplogroups, their distribution and implication to the origin of Afroasiatic languages and pastoralism, and it reads, the Proto-Afroasiatic group carrying the E-P2 mutation may have appeared at this point in time and subsequently gave rise to the different major population groups, including current speakers of the Afro-Asiatic languages and pastoralist populations. And this is from the website EUpedia, Haplogroup E1b1b, and it reads, Haplogroup E1b1b, formerly known as E3b, represents the last major direct migration from Africa into Europe. E1b1b lineages are closely linked to the diffusion of Afro-Asiatic languages. And this is from In Hot Pursuit of Language and Prehistory. Most of the Afro-Asiatic speakers share the lineage defined by Yap descendants, called PN2/M215/M35. And those are only 3 sources, but there's tons of others that I've read in the past, so check out those older videos for more sources that deal with haplogroup E being Afroasiatic. And by the way, this is why I believe Shem, Abraham, and the Israelites would have been haplogroup E. Shem is the father of Semites. Semites are Afroasiatics, and the Israelites are basically Afroasiatic Semites. If you read Genesis chapter 11, verse 10 through 26, it goes into his genealogy. This is the genealogy of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begot Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. After he begot Arphaxad, Shem lived 500 years and begot sons and daughters. And then from verse 10 to 26, it deals with the genealogy going from Shem to Abraham. And it's Arphaxad, Shelah, Eber, Peleg, Ru, Serg, Nahor. Now Terah lived 70 years and begot Abram, who will eventually become Abraham. And so Abraham descends from Shem. He's a Shemite or Semite. And when it comes to Semites, Afroasiatic, of relating to or being a language of a family of languages widely distributed over Southwestern Asia and Africa, including the Semitic. And now let's deal with Semitic. Semitic, of relating to or constituting a subfamily of the Afroasiatic language family that includes Hebrew. So, the Israelites were a confederation of Iron Age Semitic speaking tribes of the ancient Near East. Hebrew people are mostly taken as synonymous with the Semitic speaking Israelites. So the Israelites, are an Afroasiatic Semitic people, and that explains my beliefs on Shem and the Israelites. Also, haplogroup J isn't the origin of Afroasiatic. Haplogroup E is the origin of Afroasiatic. So this next comment, leads me to believe that, some people haven't seen my older videos. So I'm just going to recap with factual information when it comes to this comment. And it reads, we have Semitic, we have Caucasian. It's worded kind of strangely. We have Semitic, we have Caucasian. Shemites were Caucasians. And just by going with the information that I've covered, I will have to disagree on that, because I've actually covered in the past in the Proto-Semitic genome video when it comes to the origins of Semites. And various scholars would actually say that Semites were Africans. According to anthropologists, early Semites were not Caucasians. On the contrary, it's the exact opposite. Early Semites were Africans. This is from a conversation with Christopher Ehret, and it reads, after all, the early Semites were just a few Africans arriving to find a lot of other people already in the area. And this is from Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond. And it reads, however, Greenberg determined that Semitic languages really form only one of 6 or more branches of a much larger language family, Afroasiatic. Even the Semitic subfamily itself is mainly African, 12 of its 19 surviving languages being confined to Ethiopia. This suggests that Afroasiatic languages arose in Africa and that only one branch of them spread to the Near East. Hence, it may have been Africa that gave birth to the languages spoken by the authors of the Old and New Testaments and the Quran, the moral pillars of Western civilization. And dealing with the latest origins of Semitic, it actually places it in Africa and then going from Africa into the Levant. Again, this is what the latest paper dealing with Semitic languages. The Bayesian phylogenetic analysis of Semitic languages identifies an early Bronze Age origin of Semitic in the Near East. So it reads, these results indicate that the ancestor of all Semitic languages in our dataset was being spoken in the Near East no earlier than approximately 7,400 YBP, after having diverged from Afroasiatic in Africa. So it diverged from Afroasiatic in Africa. And then it reads down below, the discovery of such early Semitic languages could increase estimates of the age of Semitic and alter its geographical origin if these early Semitic languages were found in Africa rather than the Middle East. So, as a matter of fact, it's believed that Semites came from Africa. And I've covered this in multiple videos. There's other sources, but I'm not going to read every single source. But here are the videos that I've covered dealing with the origins of Afroasiatics. You, of course, have the origins of Proto-Afroasiatics, which covers everything. And then there's the Horn of African origin of Afroasiatics. There is the North African origin of Afroasiatics. And there is the East African origin of Afroasiatics. So there's definitely a African origin of Semites if you do choose to go with that route. I'm just going to quickly cover, and provide the evidence for what I, just said dealing with the African origin of Semites, because it's good to provide evidence for these things. The Semitic family is a member of the larger Afroasiatic family, all of whose other 5 or more branches have their origin in North Africa or the Maghreb. Largely for this reason, the ancestors of Proto-Semitic speakers were originally believed by some to have first arrived in the Middle East from North Africa, possibly as part of the operation of the Saharan pump around the late Neolithic. So in red, the color red that I just read, is the North African origin of Semites. Now I'm going to read what's in green. Denkoff sees Semitic originating between the Nile Delta and Canaan as the northernmost branch of Afroasiatic. So Denkoff sees, Semites coming from basically northeastern Africa and the Nile Delta, in between the Nile Delta and Canaan. Then Bench even wonders whether the highly divergent Goreg languages indicate an origin in Ethiopia, with the rest of Ethiopic Semitic a later back migration. And in blue, it's plain and simple, there's an Ethiopian origin of Semitic. And then in yellow, this is actually not in Africa, this is dealing with the Natufians, but I'll read it anyways. According to Christy G. Turner II, there is an archaeological and physical anthropological reason for a relationship between the modern Semitic-speaking populations of the Levant and the Natufian culture. But we're going to keep our focus on the African origin of Semites. So, as I said, in red, green, and blue, basically is the African origins of Semites. Red dealing with the North African, green dealing with a Northeast African origin, and then with blue dealing with an Ethiopian or Horn African origin. And you can see over here actually is the charts or a map that kind of shows you where it would have been. So there is indeed an African origin of Semitic people. And check out the video, Horn of African origin, Horn African origin of Afroasiatic Semites. And I'll probably do a new video dealing with it. There's a lot of more new information, so I might, just remake this video and add some more new graphics. But dealing with the Horn African, this is by Leon Lee Bennett, and it reads, proposed a scenario upon linguistic grounds wherein Semitic languages originated in Ethiopia and crossed the Red Sea. So basically, the root of Proto-Semites, they would have appeared in Ethiopia or the Horn of Africa, and then they would have went into the Middle East, either through Sinai or through Yemen. You can see over here, here's another chart that shows it, Proto-Afroasiatic, and then going up here to North Afroasiatic, and then over here crossing into Sinai to Semitic. So that's how Semites would have came from Africa. And then you have the Eastern Saharan origin of Afroasiatic Semites. As you can see right here with this map, Proto-Afroasiatic going from the Eastern Sahara or the Nile Valley into the Middle East through Sinai. So this paper deals with it. It's called The Origins of Afroasiatic up here. And it reads, this extensive, well-grounded linguistic research places the Afroasiatic homeland in the southeastern Sahara or adjacent Horn of Africa. Dinkoff does revise his common Semitic homeland, moving it from solely within Northeast Africa to areas straddling the Delta and Sinai, but continues to place the other 5 branches origins wholly in Africa. Archaeological data suggests a pre-food producing population movement from Africa into the Levant, consistent with the linguistic arguments for a pre-Neolithic migration of pre-Proto-Semitic speakers out of Africa via Sinai. So again, pre-Proto-Semites, which is ancestral Semites, coming out of Africa and going through Sinai. And here's where they would have been, the Afro-Sans around the area of the Nile, but also the Eastern Sahara, and then they would have crossed through Sinai. And then, of course, you have the North African origin of Semites. And here's a nice illustration. They would have just came out of North Africa, through Sinai into the Middle East. This book, Semitic Languages, Outline of a Comparative Grammar, and it reads in yellow, this implies that the speakers of Proto-Semitic were still dwelling in Africa in the 5th millennium BCE in the Neolithic subplume, 5,500 through 3,500 BC, when the Sahara's climate was much wetter, so that erosion took place, as in other moist temperate and subtropical regions, and there was a proper system of rivers and vegetation consisting of grass with trees. A worsening of environmental conditions is indicated in North Africa circa 3,500 BC, with disappearance of vegetation and major faunal break, desertification and desertion. This might have been the period when the speakers of Proto-Semitic passed through the Nile Delta from the west to the east and reached Western Asia, the Middle East, where written documents of the 3rd millennium BC preserve noticeable traces of pre-Semitic, and in Mesopotamia also of pre-Sumerian substratum. Thus, from North Africa, wave after wave of Semitic migrations would seem to have set forth. The earliest of these migrants and those who went furthest to the east were the Akkadians, who journeyed along the Fertile Crescent through Palestine and Syria and crossed over into Mesopotamia, reached northern Babylonia circa 3000 BC, and founded the first Semitic empire at Kish. So wave after wave of Semites were coming out of North Africa. Very interesting. Therefore, if you believe in an old earth, Shem could quite literally be an African. And early pre-Proto-Semites, ancestral Semites, they all could have been African. Whereas, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob basically would be descendants of Africans if you go with an old earth. And so the next comment that I'm about to read, again, reading these comments to sort of recap old information that I've said in videos with factual information. So this comment says, I'm sorry, but if haplogroup J isn't Shem or Semitic, kindly explain why haplogroup J is the most common amongst Semitic people and Semitic language speakers. J1 is also the most dominant in Arabs, whether they're from Iraq or Sudan or Saudi Arabia. So that is actually a great question. I don't deny that. That is an excellent question. So there's actually a paper that specifically deals with this question. And another person left a similar question to it as well. This person says, no point preaching to African Americans. They already think being black is one race. By the way, I'm just going to pause right there. I do not think being black is one race. I mean, first of all, let's just break down that word black. What does that mean? What does it mean to be black? I know a lot of people seem to believe that every dark-skinned person is black, but I think there's a better way of breaking down even that terminology, black. And that's semi-racist for you to think that African Americans even think this way. But continuing what they say, to them, an Australian Aboriginal and a Ghanaian Ashanti, who are two worlds apart, are the same people. Yeah, that's a gross generalization, because I, for one, don't believe Australian Aboriginals and Ghanaian Ashanti peoples are the same. Australian Aboriginals, their Y chromosome is typically haplogroup C. Ghanaian Ashanti people typically have haplogroup E1B1A. Those are two different haplogroups, so I don't think that they're the same. It's better to just ask people what they believe than to make assumptions about what they believe. But that's kind of semi-racist for you to say that. Not cool, Hannibal Barcopa. But reading the relevant part of this video wasn't made to discuss how haplogroup J is. Excuse me. This video wasn't made to discuss how Semitic haplogroup J is, which is the most prolific amongst Arabs and Jews of today, and one of the most significant lineages of Bronze Age Israel. So basically, from this comment and from this other comment, the argument is haplogroup J is seen highest among Arabs, and that's why it's Semitic. That's what these comments are implying. And I've actually covered this in a very recent video, and I guess I'll cover it again. But well, first of all, I did cover it in a recent video, but I've also covered my thoughts on who I think is Semitic. First of all, I did a video called Proto-Semitic and Haplogroup E a while back, like a couple of months back, and this video alone, both the title and all the content in the video, kind of already explains who I think is Semitic based on haplogroups, and it's the E marker, it's Proto-Semitic. So I do think it is kind of strange for people to kind of like would assume that I would think that it's J when I've already explained that it's E. But this is why I say it's important to watch my older videos. But yeah, by default, I'm going to say no, it's not J, it's E, because I already explained that it's E. So no, haplogroup J isn't Shem or Semitic in origin. Haplogroup E is Proto-Semitic. Haplogroup J has Semitic speakers, yes, and I will make that caveat. Yes, haplogroup J does in fact have Semitic speakers. There are people with haplogroup J that speak Semitic languages, yes. But haplogroup J is not the progenitor of Semites. And that is the other caveat that I would say. I would not consider haplogroup J to be the originator of Semitic people. Haplogroup J adopted the Semitic language from haplogroup E, and there is factual information that backs this up. But first, I want to first explain why I believe haplogroup J is Proto-Semitic. This is from Edupedia, haplogroup E1B1B, and it reads, E-M34 is the main Middle Eastern variety of E1B1B and is thought to have arrived with the Proto-Semitic people in the late Copper to early Bronze Age. So haplogroup E, Proto-Semitic. Now, dealing with haplogroup J and the idea of since Arabs have a lot of J, then that automatically means that J is Semitic. Well, this is from EUpedia, haplogroup J1, and it reads, is J1-P58 the main Arabic paternal lineage? Looking at the map of J1-P58, it is easy to assume that P58 is is a marker of Arabic ancestry because it reaches its maximum frequency in and around the Arabian Peninsula. That would be an oversimplification, and that's exactly what those comments implied, but that's an oversimplification. It is important to make a clear distinction between people who speak Arabic and those who are genetically Arabic. These are two completely different things. For comparison, people who speak languages descended from Latin, French, Spanish, Portuguese, Latin, Romanian, are not necessarily descendants from the ancient Romans of the Latium. Even those who do may not have more than a tiny fraction of their genome, which is inherited from actual Roman ancestors. This is why most Romance language speakers today cannot be considered as genetically Roman. And that's a perfect, example. Another perfect example is African Americans. Most of us, all of us, I'm pretty sure, speak the English language. But that doesn't mean that we're English people, So, continuing this paper, most present-day Arabic speakers outside the Arabian Peninsula are likewise only very partially or not all Arabic genetically. In the northern half of the Middle East, most of the people who call themselves Arabs of today are in fact mainly descendants of other historic peoples, such as the Phoenicians, Assyrians, Babylonians, or even the Hurrians. And the Hurrians are a very important people to understand in the ancient Near East. We will cover the Hurrians soon in the future. They are extremely important. They literally shaped the Middle East in terms of history. But anyways, most of these peoples are predominantly J2, with many minority haplogroups like E1B1B, G, J1, L, Q, R1A, R1B, and T. The other subclades of J1 cannot be considered to be the paternal descendants of first speakers of Arabic. Again, the other subclades of J1 cannot be considered to be the paternal descendants of the first speakers of Arabic. These other J1 lineages were Arabicized alongside other haplogroups like J2, Q1b, etc. So J1 was Arabicized, meaning those people weren't Arab originally, something else. Like J1-P58, E-M34 it is also shared with their Semitic cousins, the Jews. Haplogroup E1B1B is considered the prime candidate for the origin and dispersal of Afro-Asiatic languages across northern and eastern Africa and Southwest Asia. The Semitic languages appear to have originated within a subclade of the M34 branch of E1B1B. And this is why I believe Shem to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had haplogroup E. By the way, there are plenty of modern-day Arabs and Jews with haplogroup E. But people with haplogroup J adopted the Semitic language from haplogroup E. E-M215 and E-M35 are quite common among Afroasiatic speakers. The linguistic group and carriers of E-M35 lineage have a high probability to have arisen and dispersed together from the Afroasiatic homeland amongst populations with an Afroasiatic speaking history. A significant portion of Jewish male lineages are E-M35. Let me read that again. A significant portion of Jewish male lineages are E-M35. Haplogroup E-M35, which accounts for approximately 18% to 20% of Ashkenazi and 8.6% to 30% of Sephardi Y chromosomes, appears to be one of the major founding lineages of the Jewish population. Haplogroup E is one of the major founding lineages of the Jewish population. In this study, DNA research studies of rabbinical lineages and their importance to Jewish genealogy. This specific rabbinical family called the Laura family, actually has the oldest family tree that they say they go back to King David, and even they have E markers. I'm only going to read what's in yellow. The Laura rabbinical family has one of the oldest family trees in the world, claiming to trace back at least to King David, born circa 1037 BC. The predicted haplogroup to which the two peregrine Laura descendants belong is E-M35. The confirmed haplogroup is awaiting the result of a big Y-700 test. The previous nomenclature for this haplogroup, E1B1B1, is cited for Laura's descendants of rabbinical Jericho Laura. And it says the 95% probability prediction of the TMRCA is within 8 generations. So, this family that claims descent from King David, who has one of the oldest royal family trees, has haplogroup E. Now, dealing with the Samaritan Jews, the priestly Kohan lineage from the tribe of Levi. So, this lineage that claims to descend from Levi, the biblical Levi. The biggest and most important Samaritan family, the Kohan family, tradition, tribe of Levi, was found to belong to haplogroup E. And this article predates the change of the classification of haplogroup E3B1-M78 to E3B1A-M78 and the former subdivision of E3B1A-M78 into 6 subclades based on the research of Kroenicke. So, people from the tribe of Levi, the Samaritans, who are an isolated population, by the way, have haplogroup E. So, and here's a chart dealing with it. Samaritan Levites, haplogroup E is at 100%, 0J. And even when it comes to Arabs, like I said earlier, Arabs in Egypt have haplogroup E from 36% all the way to 62.9%. Arabs in Palestine, Palestinian Christian Arabs, have 31.8% of haplogroup E. Arabs in the Jordan of the Dead Sea have 31%. And here are all the references, by the way, for everything. So they're definitely Semites with haplogroup E. This is the Y-DNA genetic structure of the 7-Ram Bendri Hasidic dynasty, or Chassidic dynasty, excuse me for any mispronunciations. All paternal descendants of the Wortham Garithman rabbinical lineage share the L117 SNP, or 117 SNP, of Y-DNA haplogroup E, previously discovered as E-M35, E-M35.1, and E1B1B1 in the literature. Y-DNA characteristic that all descendants of the Werithman Garithman rabbinical lineage share is that they belong to the E-L117 haplogroup. According to the International Society of Genetic Genealogy, ISOGG, and National Geographic Genome Graphic Project, E1B1B, may have arisen instead in the Near East or the Middle East and then expanded into the Mediterranean with the spread of agriculture. Haplogroup E-M35, which accounts for approximately 18 to 20% of Ashkenazi and 8.6% to 30% of Sephardi Y chromosomes, appears to be one of the major founding lineages of the Jewish population. It is the most prevalent haplogroup among the Jewish population outside of haplogroup J. And I think haplogroup E is like the second largest haplogroup of the Jewish people. Samaritan communities having traditions of descending from the tribe of Levi, suggesting that the E1B1B1 men claiming to be Levites may have existed in Israel before the diaspora of 70 AD. So E is definitely an interesting haplogroup to look at. I don't know why people are kind of downplaying it in the comments section. It has all the information to likely be the haplogroup of Shem, of Proto-Semites, and of the Israelites. So, but anyways, this next comment leads me to believe, that again, some people may not have seen my videos, so I'm just going to recap some more information using factual information. So, reading what's in yellow, this is from Hebrew Israelism, and it reads, this is to discredit J as being a Semitic haplogroup. This video, is to suggest J as being a Semitic haplogroup. And I feel like that comment is a bit strange because I covered this in previous videos. Again, Proto-Semitic and haplogroup E. I kind of already established a few months ago or a few weeks ago that I believe that haplogroup E is Proto-Semitic. So, of course, I'm not going to believe any other haplogroup to be Semitic. The most I would say is that other haplogroups have Semitic speakers, but that they are not the originators of Semitic. And I've covered this in previous videos. And I don't feel like that I am discrediting haplogroup J from being Semitic. All I'm doing is reading what the scientific papers say, and I can't help it if you don't like it. I acknowledge that haplogroup J has Semitic speakers, but haplogroup J isn't Semitic in origin. Haplogroup E is Semitic in origin. Haplogroup J adopted Semitic from haplogroup E. This is what the papers say. This is from Genetics, Egypt and History, Interpreting Geographical Patterns of Y chromosome variation, and it reads, it can be postulated that select M35 carriers, speakers from Africa of a stage of ancestral Semitic, pre-Proto-Semitic, entered the Near East, where indigenous peoples adopted it. They adopted Semitic from M35 haplogroup E people, and via ongoing language shift and population growth eventually became innumerably greater than the original speakers of the ancestor. So other peoples adopted Semitic from haplogroup E, and they began to become greater in number than the original speakers, who were the E people, the E carriers, the folks who had haplogroup E. And so that's basically what happened. That's why you see a lot of J markers speaking Semitic languages, because they became numerically greater. However, ancestral Semites, pre-Proto-Semites, they had haplogroup E. And this is from Haplogroup F-M89 of Familypedia, and it reads, however, certain subclades of haplogroup E, which commonly occurs among all modern populations of Africa, are also closely associated with the dispersion of Afro-Asiatic languages, both within and in Southwest Asia. which many scholars have taken to support the hypothesis of an Northeast African origin of the Afroasiatic languages and subsequently colonization of Southwest Asia by Haplogroup E3b, bearing Proto-Semites. Let me read that again. Which many scholars have taken to support the hypothesis of a Northeast African origin of the Afroasiatic languages and subsequent colonization of Southwest Asia by haplogroup E3b bearing Proto-Semites. So Proto-Semites came out of Africa carrying haplogroup E. Under the scenario of an African origin of Afroasiatic languages, the occurrence of Eurasian Y chromosome haplogroups J, K, and R among Afroasiatic speaking populations of North Africa and East Africa would imply Eurasian immigration or gene flow into Northern Africa, accompanied by the loss of the Eurasian ancestral language and assimilation into the indigenous Afroasiatic cultures. So these Eurasian Y chromosomes like haplogroup J, K, and R, they assimilated the indigenous Afroasiatic peoples in both Africa and in the Middle East, because the original Afroasiatic people and the original Proto-Semitic people had haplogroup E. But J, R, and K, they assimilated, they adopted, the indigenous culture. So, and here's another book that deals with it, The Genetics of African Populations in Health and Disease, and it reads, for example, Underhill, 2000 study, state that the V38/M35 lineage was carried into the Near East from Africa in the Mesolithic. Thus, V38/M35 in Africa corresponds to the TAQI49AFV. It is far more likely that pre-Proto-Semitic speakers went into the Near East at this time, where Semitic languages have long since dominated. But the prominent haplotypes in most Semitic-speaking populations are variants V11 and V111 in the TAQI49AF system, which are equivalent to M89 associated lineages. So basically, V11 and V111 are M89 lineages, also known as FM89. Anyways, the most parsimonious explanation is that ancestral Semitic was adopted by those bearing haplotypes 7 and 8. Now let's put all this together. So ancestral Semites, pre-Proto-Semites, ancestral Semites had V38 and M35 lineages. That's haplogroup E. But it was adopted by people with the group 7 and 8 lineages, basically FM89 lineages. So that's basically what I've been saying this whole time. There's various linguists and geneticists who say that haplogroup E is the ancestors of Semites, is ancestral Semitic, but it was adopted by FM89 lineages. So ancestral Semitic, as it says right here, ancestral Semitic was adopted by those bearing haplotypes 7 and 8. The variance of 7 and 8 is M89, FM89, and that is, we'll actually cover FM89 in a minute. I'm going to read one more source that deals with that. This is from In Hot Pursuit of Language and Prehistory. The presence of Semitic in the Near East might be explained as follows. Early pre-Proto-Semitic speakers would have migrated into Syrio-Palestine before the Neolithic, being taken by their M35 bearers, specifically M35/78, and adopted by populations bearing M89 lineages. Again, Haplogroup E, pre-Proto-Semitic, ancestral Semitic, and then the Semitic language was adopted by who? M89 lineages. So what is M89? So haplogroup F, also known as FM89, and previously as FT, is a very common Y chromosome haplogroup. The clade and its subclades constitute over 90% of paternal lineages outside of Africa. So 90% of the world's population descends from haplogroup F. And this is why I also believe haplogroup F is a great candidate for the biblical Japheth, because a lot of European lineages and a lot of Eurasian lineages, basically Eurasian lineages, descend from haplogroup F. And that also includes haplogroup J and I. Haplogroup IJ is a human Y chromosome DNA haplogroup, an intermediate descendant of haplogroup IJK, formerly known as haplogroup F-L15. The intermediate descendants of IJ are haplogroup I and haplogroup J. Its sole sibling is K, which includes most of the world's population. So when these books say that FM89 lineages adopted the Semitic language from haplogroup E, because haplogroup E is Proto-Semitic, that would include haplogroup J as being one of those FM89 lineages adopting the Semitic language, because J descends from FM89. That's likely the main one that adopted it out of all the other FM89 lineages. It was J that adopted the Semitic language. That's why you have a lot of people with J in the Middle East today speaking Semitic languages. So, also, if you want to make, and here's a really important thing that I want to bring out, because I see this also a lot in the comments. If you want to make haplogroup J Shem, then remember, J descends from FM89. Therefore, you will basically be making 90% of the world's population into Shem. 90% of the world, most of the world that isn't Afroasiatic speakers, would be Semitic at that point. If you make J, or if you make haplogroup F into Shem, which I've seen in some comments. And 90% of the world doesn't speak Afroasiatic or Semitic languages, or have that culture. But haplogroup E literally is the founder of Afroasiatics and Semitic culture and language. Therefore, to me, it only makes sense that haplogroup E is Shem. I'm just going with the most logical outcome of everything. This is from Peter Solomon Kowalski, and he says, "My theory is that when the Proto-Semitic language left the Afroasiatic homeland of Northeast Africa, not just one lineage left, but a group of Proto-Semitic people from this region that included all the Y-DNA haplogroups then present in Northeast Africa. It is possible that Northwest Semitic Hebrew people and languages dispersed into the Levant from Northeast Africa's now region around 5000 BCE. Thus, the earliest out-of-Africa settlement of Proto-Semitic people was likely in Yemen, on the southern east region of the Arabian Peninsula. They then spread to the east and northeast to enter Mesopotamia and found the Semitic kingdom of Akkad and the Akkadian Empire. In this group, many of us conclude that haplogroup E is one of the major founding haplogroups of the Semitic people." Again, I'm just saying what the scholars say. I'm just repeating what they say. And that haplogroup E people were the ones that brought Proto-Semitic language out of the Afroasiatic homeland in Northeast Africa into the Levant and Mesopotamia. Again, this is why I believe Semites and the Israelites had haplogroup E, and they didn't have haplogroup J. Although haplogroup J would later join the nation. I want to make that caveat in point as well. I do believe that throughout the time of the nation of Israel, other groups of various haplogroups would have joined into the Israelite culture and nation. All right, because it's kind of clear that we see that with people with haplogroup J today being part of the Jewish population. So that's pretty clear that people joined the nation. But I would just say that the paternal lineage of the Israelites is haplogroup E. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And so now another comment that I came across kind of leads me to believe some people haven't seen my old videos, so I'm just going to recap using factual information. And it is, I believe your Natufian model is wrong. So I covered the Natufian model in the past. The video is literally called the Natufian Afro-Asiatic Origins. And so it's not necessarily my model. I want to make that kind of clear. It's not really my model. I'm just following what the scientists and the academics before me have said. Because when it comes to the Natufians, it's these scholars who are saying that the Natufians are the ancestors of Semites. And of course, the Natufians, they had haplogroup E. So it's not just me just saying, oh, the Natufians are Semites. Like, that's just, it's not me saying it. I'm quoting what the scholars say, which is why I believe it. So here's one of them, Godfrey C. And it reads, there is no meaning to saying that E or E1B1 B is an African haplogroup. Haplogroups don't have continental markers attached, especially when they originated near continental boundaries. E1B1B originated in Ethiopia roughly 50,000 years ago, but it crossed into the Arabian Peninsula about 22,000 years ago, and then became the dominant haplogroup of Proto-Semitic and Semitic peoples in Western Asia. Haplogroup E, the dominant haplogroup of Proto-Semitic and Semitic peoples in the Middle East. It was the dominant haplogroup of the Natufian culture of the Levant in Asia, with the Jewish diaspora starting around 1,900 years ago. E1B1B1 was carried into multiple parts of Europe and Asia. The total number of carriers in Europe and Asia exceeds the number of carriers in Africa by far, making it more of a Eurasian haplogroup if any geographic label applies. And as you can see to the left-hand side of your screen, to the left-hand side of your screen, or the right-hand side of your screen, is the area of Natufian culture. This is where the Natufians would have been, basically from the Negev all the way up into upper Mesopotamia. So it was a very large, massive land. So this is from In Hot Pursuit of Language and Prehistory, and it reads, this paper makes an additional inference, since there is archaeological and physical anthropological reason to believe that the Natufians were related to modern Semitic-speaking peoples of the Levant. Again, I'm just repeating what the scholars say. The Natufians were related to modern Semitic-speaking peoples of the Levant. Such a scenario would also explain the presence of Y chromosome haplogroup E in the Natufians and Levantine farmers, a common link between the Levant and Africa. That is from Paleolithic DNA from the Caucasus reveals core of West Eurasian ancestry. If indeed Semites descend from Natufians, then Semites would have haplogroup E. Proto-Semites would have haplogroup E. And this is from Cambridge, and it reads, given the modern distribution of Semitic languages over the area in question, which belong to the larger Afro-Asiatic family, it seems appropriate to suggest that these first farmers of the Levant and their Mesolithic predecessors, including the Natufian culture, were speaking a Proto-Afro-Asiatic language. It may be that Proto-Semitic continued to develop within the Levant and Syria area, since both Ebelite and Akkadian, early Semitic languages, are attested early, the former around 2400 BC. And by the way, Akkadian is actually one of the oldest Semitic languages. The most plausible candidates for Semitic remigration to the Fertile Crescent with TMRCAs fitting the arrival of the Akkadians and other early Semitic peoples are certain subclades of both E-V22 and E-V12, with relatively early TMRCAs present in the Middle East could be candidates for such remigration, such as E-FGC14382 TMRCAs 2200 BCE and E-V3262 TMRCAs 2600 BCE. And that is from How Eurasia Was Born. So haplogroup E is, just to go over everything, haplogroup E is seen in pre-Proto-Semites, ancestral Semites. Haplogroup E is seen in Proto-Semites, first Semites, and haplogroup E is seen in early Semites. All of this information and plenty more that I've covered in the past has led me to this conclusion that Shem to Eber to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the Israelites had haplogroup E. I'm just following, what the papers say. Please don't shoot the messenger, So now I'm going to go even deeper when we look at Natufian autosomal DNA and what modern human populations today are closest to when it comes to Natufians. What human populations are closest to Natufians? It's basically all going to be Afro-Asiatic and Semitic populations, by the way. So these same populations also typically have high amounts of haplogroup E. So here's a map showing the Natufian people with Natufian DNA. The highest proportion of Natufian DNA is in the Middle East. That makes sense. And here's a map dealing with Semitic languages. And so here is a chart dealing with populations with haplogroup E. Here is Arabs and Berbers and Sahrawi and such. And here is haplogroup E. And if you look over here, the same populations that have a distance close to Levant Natufians are the exact same populations who also typically have high amounts of E. So let's deal with Yemenis. The Yemenis and Arabian Bedouin type peoples have the highest amounts of of Natufian DNA, and they also have high amounts of haplogroup E, up from 25% to 50%. Here's the studies, by the way, that cover it. But as you can see on the Y heat map dealing with haplogroup E, you do see it pretty much in Yemen. I'm just dealing with E-M34 specifically. And the highest percentage is in the Middle East, in Yemen and Arabia. So Arabians, Bedouins, Yemeni people, they're the closest genetically to Natufians, and they have high amounts of haplogroup E. I'm just stressing that. And then the next population with high amounts of Natufian closeness, genetic closeness, would be people like Berbers and Libyans and Bedouins and Moroccans and such. And they too have high amounts of haplogroup E. Moroccan Berbers have up to 75, 72% of haplogroup E. Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardic Jews have 18, 30% haplogroup E. Berbers have up to 86 and 89 and 85 and 87% of haplogroup E. Tunisians and Algerians have 65 and 55% of haplogroup E. Sahrawi have 82% of haplogroup E. So a lot of these populations with genetic closeness to Natufians also typically have E markers. And here's another chart showing it. Moroccan Berbers have up to like 70% of E, and Moroccan Arabs have up to 7% of haplogroup E, and the Berbers have up to like 80% and such. And we see Libyan Arabs with 50% of haplogroup E, Tunisian Jews with 20%, Libyan Jews with 26% and such. So, and then dealing with Palestinians, Jordanians, and Samaritans. The priests, as I read before, the priestly Kohen lineage from the tribe of Levi, the biggest and most important Samaritan family, the Kohen family tradition, tribe of Levi, was found to belong to haplogroup E. And so, and then dealing with this chart again, Samaritan Levites, 100% haplogroup E. Here are the references, by the way. Then Arabs in Egypt have 36 to 62% of haplogroup E. Then Arab Palestinian Christians have 31% of haplogroup E. Arabs of the Jordan have 31% as well of haplogroup E. And that's what we're dealing with, Palestinians, Jordans, and Samaritans. So they also have high E markers, but they are also very close to Natufians genetically. And then again, dealing with Tunisian Jews and Moroccans and Algerians and Sahrawi, they have high amounts of E. In Morocco, you see up to like 67% of haplogroup E, and Moroccan Arabs have like 50 and 30% of E, and Berbers have like 70 and 60% of haplogroup E and such. So it is very high in North Africa as well. Genetic closeness with Natufians and haplogroup E markers. Again, the same thing, dealing with E-M81 as well as dealing with E-M78. So my position is simple. Basically, Abraham would ethnically and genetically be no different than any other Afro-Asiatic population. Haplogroup E, Natufian ancestry, and Afro-Asiatic all perfectly overlap each other. I believe from Shem to Abraham to early Israel was no different. Here is Afro-Asiatic, and right here, and here is Natufian ancestry, and here is haplogroup E. It all overlaps each other beautifully, and I believe that genetically Abraham and the Israelites and all of those peoples would have been genetically no different, been pretty much the same. Now that's going specifically with the Natufian model, which can work for an old and a young Earth. And by the way, old Earth creationism being theistic evolution, and young Earth creationism being like a 6,000 to 10,000 year old Earth. However, there are other models that I can use for an old Earth as well, which I've covered and provided academic sources for. So, but I'll end the first section of this video right here. And again, the reason for this video is because I see people in the comment section leaving responses that indicate that they haven't seen my haplogroup E videos or my Afro-Asiatic videos or my Proto-Semitic videos. And I use these comments to summarize my points from those old videos. Therefore, this isn't an attack on you, except there was some racist comments, I'm not gonna lie, but this is an attack on the people who weren't being racist, And this is just me giving my position from the sources that I've gathered. And like I said, I think if you want to know my position on these things, you have to watch my videos. And I try to be as clear as possible. And I always provide sources to back up what I'm saying and what I believe. Now, we'll get to the second part of the video here soon. And again, like I said, hopefully this answered your questions, and hopefully this kind of caught some people up to speed on why I believe, what I believe based on the genetic papers that I have, read over the years. So this is where we'll end the video. Have a good rest of your day, and be safe out there. Shalom. So before I end the video, I just want to make this quick note. Now, after having put out my video, Haplogroup E versus J, who is Proto-Semitic Shem, I've seen, a few changes of some people's opinion that, I mentioned in this video. So I want to at least acknowledge that. So example one, Hannibal Barcopa, as I said earlier in this video, he said, no point preaching to African Americans. They already think being black is one race. To them, an Australian Aboriginal and a Ghanaian Ashanti, who are worlds apart, are the same people. This video wasn't made to discuss how Semitic haplogroup J is, which is the most prolific amongst Arabs and Jews of today, and one of the most significant lineages of Bronze Age Israel. And he said haplogroup F, GHIJK is Shem, haplogroup DE is Ham, haplogroup C is Japheth. And this was from the videos, as you can see up here, Armenian, Proto-Indo-European origins, and haplogroup J, academic and biblical origins. And so now, after having put up my haplogroup E versus J video, he says almost all Afro-Asiatic family language speakers are E1B1B, apart from Semitic which has E1B1B, but AL55, I don't know what that is, but also J1. E1B1B is the language, but J1 took over, like I explained in this video, or in that video, Haplogroup E versus J, how J markers adopted the Semitic language from E. And also, Hannibal Barkova says, pre-Abrahamic Semitic speakers were E1B1B after it was adopted by J1. So he repeats the same thing. So I do want to make note that some people have changed their opinions from previous videos, so I just want to acknowledge that. And then here's a second example, example 2. The person with the Hebrew letters says haplogroup J is Hamitic Semitic, and he said, we have Semitic, we have Caucasians, Shemites were Caucasians, and now he says, he's speaking to Hannibal Barcopa in the live chat saying, yes, it was haplogroup J2B and J1A who stole the customs of E1B1B. And so that's kind of that's basically what I said in my haplogroup J versus or E versus J video, how J markers sort of adopted the Semitic language and customs from haplogroup E. So he seems to be agreeing with that based on this comment. So before I end the video, I just wanted to make note of that there was a dramatic change from a few weeks ago with some of the people. So I just want to acknowledge that. But now here is where we actually end the video. Hopefully you'll have a great rest of your day. And with all of that out of the way, shalom.